I was wrong to expect cleaners to be honest and hardworking. I was wrong to expect guests to act like me. Have you realized it's not all sunshine and 5-star reviews, too? That means you're in the right place. Today, we're helping Joseph diagnose why he has 0 future reservations for his rental. That's because this is the community where we talk about the gross, awkward, and the operational messes, as well as the real strategies that help you keep going instead of quitting. Because this industry is somewhere where you can win big, or you can ignore education and you can quit. Welcome to Short-Term Rental Problems and Solutions. Let's get right into Joseph's question. Jeremiah, hi, I just started listening to your podcast as my wife and I are making our next mortgage payment out of our savings instead of out of our rental account. This has not happened before, that our account would dip so low, and my calendar for the summer is completely empty. I heard your recent episode on understanding the algorithm, and it opened my eyes that this is more complicated than I thought. How would you approach relaunching my listing after what seems like an unscheduled layover? Thank you, Joseph. He is referring to episode number 20. That is, the algorithm is judging you, and here's how. And we break down a lot of the different factors that play into your success and your visibility on a platform like Airbnb. Joe, if I can call you Joe, I want to tell you a quick story about Josh. So this gentleman, he contacted us at our property management company and wanted me to take a look at his house, offer some help, and maybe be his manager. So he was looking for a new cleaner. He was considering all avenues of change. The catalyst for this was that his calendar was completely empty as well. Up until about February 15, he was actually doing really well. Like his house is booking over and over and over and over again. And then after that, he had like 2 more reservations and then like nothing for the entire spring. And so I had this conversation with him. I walked through his house, and what Josh didn't realize was I was his new competition. I had just listed my A-frame in the same community at much better prices and in much, much better condition. So his property had no chance, because now anybody who's looking for an A-frame is finding mine to be a much better price, but also much nicer. And so it's a better value than his is. Now, did I launch my listing with this in mind? No. But Joe, this could be what's happening to you. You might have some new competition that just popped up on the market, and with no explanation at all, your conversion rate sinks to nothing. Because now when people see your listing compared to that one, they're clicking and booking that one instead. So the algorithm's seeing that as like, well, there must be something wrong. There must be something new. And it's not that you necessarily changed your pricing. It's not necessarily that you changed photos, description, anything. It's just that now there's somebody new who's trying to get attention, and some attention is taken away from you. Now, the algorithm kind of amplifies the effect of this, and you go from page 1 to like page 5, but you always have to be aware of what the new listings are, because one of them or 2 of them or all of them may take away from your success. In this situation, Josh is a bright guy. I gave him a lot of strategies and ideas and things that he could employ in order to make his house more successful. And at the end of the day, instead of going with management, he chose to employ those strategies himself, which I fully support. Again, I'm not doing this. I'm not giving away the secret sauce so that people can compete with me. I feel like we all win together or we all lose together. At the end of the day, if his listing gets better, that's going to bring more tourism to our industry, more tourism to our region. And we all benefit from that. And besides, it's not like we're comparing apples to apples. His house, although it's an A-frame, is different than mine. Mine kind of focuses in on the niche of a romantic getaway, where his is more like, hey, we've got 3 bedrooms and we have enough beds for you to put 6 or 8 people in here. So bring the family. We're trying to get to different groups. I just think that he was serving an underserved market that I jumped in and started serving. And now he's got to find his new niche, which is, he just didn't really have direction before. I just explained, look, you need to figure out what your guest avatar is and then focus in on that. And I think he's doing that now, but he's not competition for me. I've just seen my property exploding and doing much better. But guess when I listed it? February 6th. February 6th, which is only 9 days before he saw his new reservations just fall off a cliff. Now, it was like the end of ski season, so normally that sort of thing happens. I don't know if he was employing dynamic pricing or if there was some other issues going on, but like Josh said, Jeremiah, I've got all 5-star reviews in value, in cleanliness, in everything. It's all fives. And we'll get into this in a minute, but like Airbnb is tracking dozens of things that you have no visibility of. And what you're telling me is that the things I can see look completely fine. So what's actually going on here? We'll get into that in a minute. But this micro trend of there's another house that's similar to mine that just launched, it does have an effect on your listing, and it could be more than just a short-term effect. So you've got this new, I don't know, I guess like imagine that you're trying out for a baseball team, and in day number 5 of tryouts, imagine this is like an ongoing tryout, right? Somebody new steps on the field and they want to take your spot. Right. So now you've got new competition. You might have to adjust your strategy. Now, maybe you're not the best, left fielder. Now, maybe you're the best, like, shortstop or the best catcher. You've got to figure out on this team with this talent that's available, I need to be the best at something. So even though you might want to be a first baseman, you have to be open to being an outfielder or a pitcher, depending on what the team needs. So in this situation, we're talking about economics and tourism trends and guests and what they're looking for. So in this situation, you've got competition that comes in all the time. And if somebody's going to take what you're doing as their method of success, and then they're going to go a step further, you've got to think about, do I really want to dig into this or should I pivot? Because you don't have any future reservations. It's not like you can't. You could block out the calendar. You're not going to disappoint anybody. You could relaunch later on. And, now you've got a much better listing. You've got the potential for a much higher nightly rate. This might be a good time for you to like do some repairs, whatever. And we can talk strategy. I'm happy to do that, Joe. But as of this recording, it's June 23rd. So we are looking at July reservations and looking at August reservations. And so every day that this isn't performing is kind of a big deal because we're looking at the higher priced nights, right? That's what we're missing out on right now. So that's like micro trends. Let's talk about macro trends. So on a really, really large scale, you've got gas prices. People are feeling the pain at the pump. What do they put their gas on? Their credit card. So if credit cards are high, then they don't have the credit limit necessary for them to go on a vacation. All those types of things will impact your property as well because it's a macro trend. It's affecting everybody. Now, something that I keep comparing the Poconos to is like Dollar General, right? We are like the budget friendly location. Like this is where people go when they don't have the money to go to the Bahamas or to Florida is the Poconos because like we've got like a third of the population within a 5-hour distance. So because of how close we are to things, we're not necessarily their preferred place for a vacation, but like we're their budget option. And in a bad economy, when people don't have additional funds, they still have to go grocery shopping. It's just that they go to grocery shopping at like Aldi or Dollar General. And both of those places are great and I shop at them regularly. But they are the discount option. Like Whole Foods is feeling the pain, when people don't have money to spend Whole Foods prices. And other stores, though, are still selling food. Like the Americans are still going to eat the same amount of food. Americans are still going to eat the same amount of food, whether they are, at the credit limit or whether they have additional funds or recently got a bonus. They're still going to eat about the same amount of food. It's just where they're going to get it is going to change. So I look at the tourism industry that way too. And I think that the Poconos is kind of like going to see a boost in tourism for those budget options because people are trying to find like a good place to go that's a good value. And these days, the cost of travel has just gone up because of gas prices. So that's one macro trend, but here's another one to think about. So I just got off the phone yesterday with this guy, Dave. And Dave is a Vacasa owner. So for any listeners that aren't familiar with Vacasa, it's a big nationwide brand, but Vacasa was sold a couple of years ago as a corporation to Casago. Now, Casago is a, similar industry, but they purchased Vacasa and continued operating each location of Vacasa as Vacasa. So people didn't realize that they were signing up for a Casago-owned corporation. Nevertheless, nothing really changed. Anyhow, so Dave contacted me because the Vacasa in our area, which was Vacasa Poconos, sold all of their contracts to a company that is operating as Pocono Vistas. And what I'm told was that this is another like nationwide brand, but everywhere they go, they've got their own little local, like their local outfit, right? So there was like, Knoxville Vistas and, Smoky Mountain Vistas and so on and so forth. So they kept the name convention and they just kept on rebranding for every location. So they just purchased about 50 listings. And these are short-term rental listings that Vacasa had listed. And now Vacasa took them all down and they've all been reposted by, I forget the guy's name. It's like Matthew or Ralph or something. And he's not a super host yet. He's been a host for 1 month. He's got 3 reviews and it's a 4.67 star rating. These owners are seeing their empty calendar after it being relaunched by Pocono Vistas, and they're very nervous. They knew what they were getting with Vacasa, and they had some inkling of success in the beginning, but they're constantly like pulling out of their pocket to pay for this property. So the effect, and here's what's going on. And here's why I'm talking about this with a macro trend. It's that Vacasa sold 50 contracts to Pocono Vistas. Pocono Vistas has 50 new listings all right now. Pocono Vistas told Dave, we're going to have to price your property at about $100 a night in order to gain some traction. Well, if that's the strategy that they're doing with Dave's house, guess what they're doing with the other 49 listings? They're also pricing them at $90, $80, $60, $100 a night in order to get some traction. Will this work for them? I don't know. Time will tell. It's probably going to work. It's not a bad strategy, but like their property should be like $250 a night. Now, yes, you do have to discount it. Just depends on how hard you want to push on the throttle. Dave is very concerned about the safety of his listing. He's worried about getting these budget guests in there that are going to destroy his property. And we talked about that at length. But what we have to realize is that those 50 listings all of a sudden being relaunched are going to have an impact, a ripple effect on the market as a whole. So let's get into that for a second. So Dave's new property manager lists his house at this super low price. That's new competition for everybody in that little region and that same size and style category, right? But then he does that for 49 other listings across the entire region. He's now putting little seeds out there of really low priced properties that are, really the same properties that were managed by Vacasa before. But Vacasa had a listing that had already generated momentum. They had these things already humming and going, but those listings were all shut down. So where are these guests coming from? Well, now when people search, they're finding a whole bunch that are like really ridiculously low priced, and they're going to be comparing that to everybody else's. So he could be like a magnet drawing all these reservations right into his 50 listings because of this pricing. But here's the effect that that has. Now other people are seeing their calendars completely open, and they're saying, "Oh, what the hell?" Right? I'm not getting booked. What's going on? They start noticing that they're not getting reservations. They start lowering their prices. But it's not just 1 or 2 or 3 people that do that. Across the region, we're seeing this, where a whole bunch of people are lowering their prices. And what this does is this panic drop. It's a race to the bottom. Now, just to get occupancy, people are dropping their prices more than they need to in order to get reservations because, again, everybody's got bills to pay. But they might not realize what's actually going on is that there's 50 new listings. And as soon as those listings get enough reservations, the prices are going to go back up. Well, everybody's reacting to the market all at the same time, and prices are crashing. It's this panic sell, like almost like what happened with the stock market in 1929. So the values of nightly rates crashed. And if you didn't realize this, you were left out there like, why am I not getting reservations? So I was speaking with a colleague. This is a woman who owns a large cleaning service. I think she has about 50 employees. So this is a big like commercial short-term rental kind of cleaning service. And I was talking to her at a networking event and we were talking about June. She said, everybody's doing bad. Everybody's doing bad this month. And this is maybe a week and a half ago. And I'm speaking to her and she's like, nope, everything is down. You're not the only one. Everybody is down. Was she cleaning houses for Vacasa? Was she cleaning them for this new Pocono Vistas? No, she wasn't aware of that. But those types of things are happening across the board. Now, this is macro trends. You just have to have some way of keeping a gauge on that activity. You just need to have like a thermometer that you can look at and be like, oh, it's just cold outside. It's not just cold inside, it's actually cold outside. I don't have an issue with my heating system. My heating system's working. It's just extraordinarily cold outside. You've got to have a way of testing the water, of testing the temperature and seeing, is this something that's happening to everybody or is this only happening to me? Which is a whole other reason why we shouldn't be competing with one another, but collaborating and networking and working together. It's because then we can recognize these trends for what they are. And instead of panicking, everybody can just say, well, as soon as that guy gets his reservations, we're all going to get booked at these higher nightly rates. And we don't have to let his little pebble in the pond cause this ripple effect that affects all of us, right? Because we're all now racing to the bottom. So Joe, another thing that could be happening is a technical glitch. Just about a week ago, I got a message from a guest that seemed a little strange. They said, hey, Jeremiah, I can't see any photos of bedroom number 5. I can see photos of bedroom number 1, 2, 3, and 4, but I don't see any of 5. Can you send me some pictures? Now, as an inquiry, no, I can't send you photos. Airbnb will not allow me to send you pictures. But as a message, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I don't have any listing photos of bedroom number 5. I look on the actual platform and I look at my listing and there's 21 pictures. Guys, there was 42 photos. We're cut in half. Somehow I lost half of my pictures that were advertising my listing. And now I'm like, what's going on? So I double checked a lot of other things. We still had all of our amenities. Our description had not changed. Our price per night hadn't changed. Everything seemed okay. It's just that we were missing 21 photos. So the photos that we're missing is now we only had one picture of each bedroom. Now we had no pictures of bedroom number 5. And now we had 0 photos of bathrooms. I'm surprised no guest asks me if I have bathrooms or what the bathrooms look like. Fortunately, this question came in. We handled it as quickly as we could. I don't think that we missed out on much business because of it, but we have to update our photos now. But this sort of technical glitch happens, especially when you use a property management software. I use HostAway. It's not a secret. And it could be HostAway's fault. It could be Airbnb's fault. But here's the thing. Airbnb changes up the way things are formatted, the way things look, and the rules all the time. And it could just be that all of those pictures were named by me with file names that were at the end of the alphabet. And maybe they said, well, your listing because it has this many, but I don't know what happened. But technical glitches like that happen sometimes. So on a regular basis, check your fees. Check your instant book status. Check your price per person. If there is a price per person, go into your listing and view it like a guest. You should be making sure that pets are still allowed, that the fees are still correct, that there's no additional costs on top of these things. You're going to want to just make sure that there's no serious technical glitches going on, because that might really just be it. I had a situation one time where a listing went from having 4 bedrooms down to having 1 bedroom. And that's just the way it appeared on Airbnb. Was there actually 1 bedroom? No. There's 4 bedrooms and we have pictures of 4 bedrooms and everything. It's just for some reason, when you click on the listing, it now says there's 1 bedroom with 8 beds. That doesn't make any sense. But it's the way it was showing up. And we corrected it immediately after we noticed a guest ask about it, which is a little bit embarrassing that I didn't catch it first. But, we obviously have 4 bedrooms here and it says it in the description. So it was kind of things that other people might notice the glitch, but we didn't notice it. And this sort of thing happens sometimes. So you have to be conscious. You have to be aware of your listing and how it's appearing for people. Another thing about that last example though is we've fixed it through HostAway. And then Airbnb went right back to where it was. Then we fixed it in Airbnb and we ignored it in HostAway and it went right back to the way it was. And then we fixed it in both. And you guessed it, it went right back to the way it was. We contacted HostAway support, and after we got past the AI bot, we got an actual person in technical support that told us that we have to disconnect the listing and then fix it in Airbnb, and then we have to re-import the listing in order for it to sync correctly. Well, how would I have known that, right? So now we're aware that there's certain things that you can't change from your hosting software. It actually has to be changed in VRBO or in Airbnb. So another thing, Joseph, is guest reviews. So many hosts don't realize this. Many hosts do, that your guests are actually being asked questions about your listing that you don't get to see the answer to. So just like Josh from earlier who said, Jeremiah, I've got 5 stars across like my last 10 ratings. It's 5 out of 5 for cleanliness, value, location, everything's 5. So what's going on? Well, he might not realize that when you use Airbnb and you're leaving a review for the listing, it asks questions like, did you feel safe during your stay? Yes or no? Did the house match the photos? Yes or no? Or do you recommend this listing to other guests? Now, when I leave a review for a guest on Airbnb, I'm asked, would you recommend this guest to other hosts? The same thing can be asked of your guest. Would you recommend this listing to other guests? Well, those are reports. That's data. That's important data to Airbnb that you felt safe while you were there. The house matches the photos and that you would recommend this to other guests. Airbnb knows a bunch of things that we don't know. These are just 3 examples, and it's just part of reviews. Airbnb knows when a guest leaves a 5-star review, but asks Airbnb for a refund. They know when a guest leaves a 5-star review, but contacts support 3 times during their stay. When the guest leaves a good review, but they say privately to Airbnb, they would not return here. As hosts, we think we're being judged on the reviews that we can see. But the reality is Airbnb is evaluating dozens of signals that never appear on our dashboard. Joseph, the last thing I want to bring to your attention today is that your pricing might actually just be like 10% too high. I got an angry call from a homeowner on Monday. And I don't want to give too many details away because I don't think he would be happy to hear that I'm talking about him. And I'm not complaining, but I am going to tell you this story so that you can understand the psychology of this interaction between a property owner and a property manager. But also, something that a lot of people go through is a feeling of panic because they look at their calendar, they realize there's no reservations, and they'll panic and they'll drop the price 50%, 75%. They just want to get reservations. They just want to get booked. They just need activity in their property. And that's leaving a lot of money on the table. So if you have a good professional property manager, if you went through a decent like vetting process when you got them signed up, if you did your homework and if you already know that they're good at marketing, they're good at pricing, they're good at revenue management, and they're good with operations, then why would you stop trusting them? Obviously, they make more money when you make more money. But in this situation, the homeowner was like, Jeremiah, if we're vacant, you don't make anything. I actually lose money. And like, here's the thing though, and I didn't say this to him, but I'm counting on that revenue too. I know when my houses are going to be booked. I underwrite my properties. I underwrite my business with its expenses. We've got a rent to pay. We've got a mortgage to pay. We've got people who have salaries coming in, whether your property performs or not. Nobody in my organization that's 24 people strong and local is paid on commission. So they're all going to get paid whether you have bookings or not. So I have bills to pay too. And we need to perform at expected levels in order for us to meet all of our financial obligations. This is not some tip, right? I'm not moonlighting as a waitress at Denny's so I can just make a little extra spending money. This is a serious business for me, and other property managers see it the same way. So you've got things to lose, so do I. But this client that I'm talking about, kind of a big client. So anyway, he contacts me and says, Jeremiah, can it be true that after this reservation, we've got one more reservation for the entire summer? And I said, yes, it's true. I knew about this and I've already adjusted our pricing and I'm employing some soft strategies to get us booked. My goal is for us to have 2 reservations in the next 2 weeks, 3 reservations in the next 4 weeks, and 6 reservations in the next 8 weeks. I want to see our occupancy petering off over time because we're likely to get reservations 2 weeks out. And we want to make sure that that's booked. And he's panicking because it's the 4th of July coming up soon. And we don't have a reservation for the 4th of July yet. And I said to him, remember, this happened last year. And we got a 4th of July reservation and we made $6,000 for it. And we were all very happy with the result. But that reservation didn't come in until a couple of days before. There's this, I don't want to call it like a razor's edge, but like with experience and with listings and with pricing strategies, could we make a mistake? Yes. If we make a mistake, it's a kind of a big deal, right? But some people want to play it safe and they're not able to get the most revenue out of their listings because of how safe they're playing it. So I reminded him, when you came to us for management, you were listing your property at $1,200 a weekend, whether it was spring, summer, fall, or winter. No matter when it was always the same static price. There's only a few weekends that you priced it up to $2,000. That was the 4th of July and New Year's. So I've taken this, and in a random summer weekend, we're making $4,500. So from $1,250 up to $4,500. And I get that this is like, you know, not enough because we can always do better. But at the same time, you need to keep in mind that we made $115,000 in the last 6 months with this property because we were able to get your pricing from $1,250 as a static, undynamic pricing strategy all the way up. Are there some weekends that I have priced at $1,600? Yes, there are some that are still that low. But like those are the least in demand weekends that if I price it too high, it's not going to get booked at all. And I'd rather have a reservation in there for $1,600 than for nothing and have nobody in there, right? So we're targeting an occupancy level and we're adjusting pricing in smaller increments. So I had already done a 5% decrease about a month ago, and I did another 5% decrease shortly before I got this phone call. And this homeowner was so panicked that what am I going to do? I could get fired here because if I'm not performing to his expectations, then what's going to happen to me? I might be out that entire revenue that I was worried about. And just explaining to you, I count on this money to come in order to cover salaries and mortgages and things like that. So I could be out the whole business just because this homeowner is getting heated about his lack of occupancy. So he obviously doesn't have the same vision or visibility that I have. So I employ some strategies. I apply a 20% price reduction. I throw in some custom promos. I'm changing things up. I'm moving photos around. I'm changing the description. I'm updating some things, all in a panic because what do I need to keep my job? I need occupancy. And I know for a fact that he was okay with $1,250 a weekend back in the day. I know that I make significantly more money when I can rent his house for $4,500 a reservation versus 1/3 of that. But am I going to cut prices by 50%? No, because I'm not panicking that much. But here, my job is now depending upon occupancy instead of revenue. So he's now taking our incentives and our relationship and making it based on something that doesn't serve his interests long term. So that's the psychology I'm trying to get to here, is when homeowners panic and they don't trust the process and they don't trust their property manager, they put pressure that's going to make for some less than great moves. Like, I don't think it was a great move for him to pull this. Now, maybe that's his management strategy. This is a gentleman who comes from a business background. And this probably works when you're dealing with middle level managers, CEOs, and things like that, putting pressure on them to perform at a higher level. But what it's causing your property manager to do, well, I guess it just depends on the person, right? Some people are already focused on your property and making it perform. Others, now that they're at risk of losing the deal, are going to cut rates significantly. So will my income for the next month go down? Absolutely it will. Overnight, we got 6 new reservations. Everything that I did worked. We're definitely getting attention from the algorithm. His base rate is now only 15% lower than it used to be. And after we've built up a little bit momentum, I expect to get down to only 10% less than what it used to be. I expect to go back up. Now, that didn't have to be done, in my opinion. I think we could have adjusted pricing without panicking. But Joseph, you got to understand, like, this is what happens in our industry across the board. And you are competing with people who are sometimes panicking when they're seeing what could be a normal, seasonal fluctuation in pricing. So Joe, like, that's there to help you understand the psychology and the dynamic a little bit. Like, sometimes things that are happening behind the scenes, like prices are not just staying where they are. That's an interesting dynamic. And you can't just trust Price Labs to adjust your pricing the way it's supposed to be. There's a last thing, is this like niche category. So your dynamic pricing model, I use Price Labs, you can use whatever you want. I don't recommend using Airbnb's smart pricing. I recommend using a third-party tool like Price Labs. There's other options out there that are apparently better priced and more simple to use. But nevertheless, when you have a niche rental, it's still adjusting your pricing based on the marketplace. So what I've found is that like little romantic getaways are priced unnecessarily low in the fall and the spring, but they're priced unnecessarily high in the summer and the winter. So throughout the year, I'm actually adjusting our base rate on those properties down and then back up again, and then down and then back up again. And last summer, I had an event like yours where my calendar had tons of holes in it for this one specific romantic getaway. And what I recognized from that was like, I could lower my price and build up some momentum in the summertime. But since my calendar was open for the fall, what I was actually getting was a bunch of fall reservations, and I was still priced too high for the summer. So there was this mismatch, right? So I needed a base rate from September 5th on. Anything after Labor Day, that base rate needed to be higher. And I needed a base rate for the summer that I could put down in order to build up some momentum. And the way I got over that was just custom promos. I was able to assign custom promotions for the whole summer, and to get all those weekends booked and things. I was able to get the price down to what I consider to be a fair price, a market value. I was still able to keep the fall pricing a little bit higher. And something you could consider doing is shortening your booking window if that's the case for your property. Most people, that's not the case. But if you are like a niche, if your house is a cave in like Tennessee, or a cave in the Rocky Mountains, and all the houses around you are not caves, like you've got to think about your occupancy compared to theirs. It's not like people are coming to your house because they're coming to your marketplace. They're coming to your house because it's a cave. Like that's really cool and awesome. So you've got a different seasonality than other places have. And while you do want to employ dynamic pricing, you don't want your dynamic pricing to be based on everybody else in the neighborhood. Like you're a cave. There's only one of you in that region, right? So Joseph, there's a few theories here for you to try out. You do need to relaunch your listing, metaphorically speaking, and then keep an eye on these types of things for the future. So if there's a listener to this episode who hasn't seen episode 20, the algorithm is judging you. Here's how. Then I recommend you go back to that episode for some additional context. These 2 episodes will definitely help you understand what's wrong with your listing and what to try to do in order to fix that. That's because this is the show where we discuss the challenges no one talks about when they sell the dream of easy passive income. Left unaddressed, they're exactly the problems that will break your operation. If you're a property manager, an owner-operator, a co-host, or just an aspiring investor, I would love to help. If you've got a question, then please email me at info@galvanizedmanagement.com. Your problem might be the next one that we break down, and chances are you'll help a lot of other hosts in the process too. We win or we lose together. If this episode helps you, great. Share it with another host who's in the trenches. Rate and subscribe too, so we can organically reach more people. That's how we make this industry better. I'd also love to see you follow on TikTok at Galvanized Investments and Facebook and YouTube at Galvanized Management. Until next time, stay steady, keep learning, and keep building something real. This is Short-Term Rental Problems and Solutions.